couple of months ago, I got a nasty text message from a gal named Jill, and she was super upset, I could tell in the text message. And she said she didn't understand why I wouldn't call her back, and I took her money over a month ago, and I wouldn't respond to her phone calls or her emails, and I wasn't making any progress on her survey, and if I didn't talk to her in the next 24 hours, she was going to call her lawyer. So obviously, I was very surprised by that. And I didn't know what was going on. I'd never talked to Jill. So I said, well, hey, either there's been a mistake or maybe one of my partners put Jill under contract and didn't talk to me about it. So I went ahead and responded to Jill, and I said, hey, I'm really sorry. If my company has put you under contract and we failed to communicate with you, I will fix that immediately. Let me know what the property is that's supposed to be surveyed, and if you can, send me a copy of the contract. And so the next day, I got another message from Jill. She said, I'm really, really sorry. This was a mistake. You weren't the surveyor I hired, and I'm so sorry that I was rude to you in my text message. And so I texted her back and I said, hey, no problem. Stuff happens. I understand. I said, if you can't get that surveyor to talk to you, you probably need to call the licensing board, because what he's doing in this particular instance, it was a man. I said, what that surveyor is doing is not right, and he needs to be held accountable by the licensing board for what he's done. She said, oh, don't worry. She said he finally responded. He finally responded to me. When I realized what I'd done, I resent my nasty message to him, and he finally responded. So why does this happen? Why do people get in a situation where they've hired a surveyor to do a boundary survey, and they've given that surveyor some money, maybe some deposit money to have a signed contract, and then all of a sudden the surveyor disappears? She won't return phone calls or emails, or he won't. Why does that happen? That shouldn't happen with licensed professionals, right? So before I tell you why that happens, I'll share another quick experience with you. My partner got a phone call a few weeks ago from a local landowner. He owned a small nut tree farm, and he called and talked to my partner. He said, hey, my neighbor's getting ready to plant new trees. I think he might be over the property line, and I'd like to get a survey. He says, I don't know what's going on. He says, I've talked to 2 or 3 different surveyors, and everybody said they were going to help me take care of this, and nobody will call me back. So my partner took a look at it and gave him an idea of what it would cost, to survey. And it was an old piece of property that hadn't been surveyed in forever. And, it was not going to be inexpensive. And the guy said, well, this is outrageous. I can't believe you guys are charging this. And so both of these stories kind of illustrate the same. They're both sides of the same coin, right? Which is you hire a boundary surveyor for $800. And then you can't get that surveyor to call you back, right? And so in the second example, all right, here's this farmer. He finally got somebody to answer the phone, surveyor to answer the phone. We were able to take care of what he needs, but he didn't like our price. But all the guys that he called that were going to do the survey for $800 won't return. They won't call him back, right? You can't get him under contract. So what's happening here, and why is it happening? So what's happening? Let's start with that question first. So here's what's happening. You hired a surveyor based on low price. That's what happened. A lot of people do that. It's not a good idea. I've got other videos that explain why it's not a good idea, but a lot of people do it. They don't know any better. And that's how most people shop. So here's what happened. You went out, you hired a surveyor for low price. And why is that a problem? That's a problem because what that means is this surveyor always has too much to do, right? So if you hire a surveyor that wins his work based on low price, that means he has always got more to do than he has, or she always has more to do than they have time for. So that's the first problem. Okay, here's the second problem. When you hire a surveyor on low price, that surveyor doesn't care about giving you good client service. He doesn't care about being responsive to communications. He probably doesn't care about the quality of the job that she does, he or she does. They just don't care. That's not how they win work. They win work by being the cheapest, right? So you can't hire a land surveyor for low price and then expect her to give you great service. That's not how she wins work. She wins work based on low price. And that surveyor, because they operate on a business model where they win most of the work through cheap pricing, they're on a shoestring budget. So what does that mean? What does that mean when you're a surveyor on a shoestring budget? That means, your truck is breaking down, your equipment's not working, your plotter's breaking down, you don't have the money to pay for the title report that you need. But that's the world that that you're in when you win your work based on being the cheapest, right? And I understand. I have friends of mine that are surveyors, and that's the model they run, right? So I'm very familiar with it, and they're not bad people. I just happen to think that's a really bad way to run a business, but a lot of surveyors do that. So why do surveyors do this? Why will surveyors sell boundary surveys so cheap that they can't get paid to do a good job? Because that's basically what happens, right? The price is so low that they can't afford to provide good service. So why do surveyors do that? Well, here's what I've learned about surveyors. Because most surveyors really love what they do. Most surveyors like to be surveyors. We will work for starvation wages, right? We love being outside. Most surveyors just really love what they do. And because of that, we will just do it for almost free, right? In fact, one of the smartest business people I've ever worked for that was a surveyor didn't really like surveying necessarily. He was a carpenter by trade and just happened to fall into surveying and ended up in a position where he was managing a survey department. And, he used to tease me because I was a hardcore survey junkie. I loved being a surveyor. And he was like, it's not about this for me. Like, if I can't make money doing this, I'm not going to do it, right? And, at the time, I didn't like that about him. But I look back on it now, now that I own a business, I'm like, he had something figured out there, right? He wasn't going to be a surveyor if he couldn't make money at it, right? But most surveyors aren't like that. They'll work for starvation wages. Most surveyors don't understand their unique value proposition, so they don't know why they're a good fit for your project. They'll take any kind of work they can get, whether they're qualified or not, whether they can make money at it or not, whether they can really provide you value or not. And so there's no difference between Bob and Sally, the two surveyors right down the street from one another. They've made no effort to understand what they do different from the surveyor down the street, right? And so they don't understand their unique value proposition. And because of that, they don't understand how to find a good fit between consultant and client. I talk about that in some of my other videos. Like I said, they'll take any work that they're offered. And so what happens in that situation? Everybody's unhappy. The surveyor's unhappy because they're not getting paid enough to cover their costs. The client's unhappy because they hired a surveyor and gave them money, and now the surveyor's being unresponsive, not communicating, or providing poor client service. So this is a lose-lose for everybody here, right? Okay, so how do you fix this? If you're in this situation where you've hired a surveyor to do a boundary survey and they're non-responsive, they won't call you back, they're not giving you good service. Okay, here's the very first thing you do. Fire the land surveyor, right? You have the right to terminate the contract. Now, you may owe them a little bit for the work that they performed, but yeah, you need to get out of this situation. You're not going to fix this surveyor, more than likely. So you need to terminate that contract, fire that surveyor, find a reputable survey company. And then when you find that survey company, ask some questions. What type of work do you do? Why do you do that type of work? Is there types of work you don't do? Is my project the type of project you normally work on? Why or why not? And then get schedule commitments and tie those to the compensation. So we, on a regular basis, make commitments to the client. In my contract, I say, I will have the survey done by this date, right? Or in this many days, right? That you should expect that, right? You order something on Amazon, they tell you it's going to be here in this many days, right? If it's not, you call back, you get a refund. So don't be afraid to get schedule commitments from your surveyor. Now, I'm not saying, sometimes things happen. There's we could get bad weather, or, there's mix-up and we can't get access to the site on the day we thought we were supposed to. So I'm not saying that there aren't situations that come up that might cause a short delay in a survey. But if you've handed somebody money and signed a contract 4 weeks ago, and they're 4 or 5 or 6 weeks in and they won't return your phone calls, that's a problem. You need to fire that surveyor. So why won't the surveyor you hired for $800 call you back? he or she won't call you back because they're too busy. They have too much work. They're running on a shoestring budget, and they don't get projects by providing good service. They get good projects by being the cheapest. Don't hire that surveyor.